The dust on the track settled, but the world around me was a whirlwind of disbelief and sound. Honestly, I still replay that final stretch sometimes, the roar of the crowd not quite drowning out the astonished gasps that rippled through the bleachers. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected me to cross that finish line like a blur. Especially not the giants who lined up beside me. It was a day seared into my memory, a pivotal moment not just for me, but for my son, Ethan. 5 years we'd been in Oakwood Creek, 5 years building a life, navigating a new culture, and feeling, often, like we were constantly just outside the frame. This wasn't some elite athletic competition, mind you. This was the annual sports day at Oakwood High, all bright banners and too loud pop music and the smell of sunscreen and concession stand hot dogs. A perfectly ordinary slice of suburban American life, really. Except, for us, nothing felt quite ordinary anymore. I'm Mr. Lee, Ethan's dad. And standing there, a man who barely scrapes 5'6" amongst a lineup of fathers who look like they ate iron for breakfast, I felt every single one of those 5 years, every moment of being the other. There were murmurs as I walked to the starting block. Polite smiles from some, sure, but also snickers. Louder ones I pretended not to hear. Is that the little Korean guy? I heard. Followed by a chuckle and something about needing a head start just to finish. Prejudice, subtle and not so subtle, was something we'd unfortunately gotten used to. But today, it felt sharper, heavier. Because today, it wasn't just directed at me. My decision to run in the dad's 100-meter dash wasn't spontaneous. Not at all. It was born of a pain far deeper than any condescending remark could inflict. It was born from seeing the light dim in Ethan's eyes over the past few months. Seeing him shrink away from the vibrant kid he used to be. This sports day, this very track, had become a source of dread for him. He'd been hurting. Badly. The reason? Simple, brutal discrimination. Kids, led by Jake, a kid whose dad, Coach Miller, looked like he belonged on a football field sidelines barking orders, had been relentless. Teasing Ethan about being small, about being Asian, about not being good enough for sports. Telling him he'd just lose anyway. My heart had fractured watching my son crumble under the weight of their words, the casual cruelty of it all. I tried talking to him, tried talking to the school, but sometimes words just aren't enough. I looked back towards the stands before settling into my stance. My wife was there, her face a mask of worry. Beside her, Ethan, biting his lip, his eyes wide with a fear I knew was for me. Fear that his dad, already targeted, would face public embarrassment, confirming everything the bullies said. My stomach twisted, but seeing that raw vulnerability in his face, it solidified my resolve. This race wasn't about reliving past glories from my college track days back in Korea, it was about igniting a spark in my son. It was about challenging the narrow idea that strength and capability are only defined by size or background. It was about showing everyone, that you can't measure a person's heart by their height. It was a desperate, terrifying gamble, fueled by a fierce love. But to understand the seismic shift that 100 meters brought, you first need to grasp the quiet storm that had been brewing in my son's heart. The storm in Ethan's heart? It wasn't a sudden squall, it had been building for a while, a gray cloud settling over the boy who used to be sunshine personified. Before the whispers started, before the pointing and the snickers, Ethan was just Ethan. All energy and goofy grins, always the first one out the door for school, buzzing about whatever new game he'd invented during recess. He loved tagging along to the local park soccer games, even if he was always one of the smallest on the field. He had this spark, this undeniable zest for life, you know? It made the tough parts of being an immigrant family feel a little lighter. But over the last couple of months, that light had started to flicker. Dinner times, which used to be a chaotic chorus of Ethan recounting his day, became quiet affairs. He'd push his food around, eyes glued to his plate. Coming home from school meant heading straight to his room, the door clicking shut with a finality that twisted my gut. My wife and I exchanged worried glances over his bowed head. Puberty, we'd told ourselves at first. Just a phase. But it felt heavier. More brittle. Then came the sports day announcement, a date usually circled on our calendar with excitement. This year?
Silence. A deepening shadow in Ethan's already shadowed eyes.
One evening, as we sat at the kitchen table, the silence stretched thin.
I couldn't take it anymore.
Hey, buddy, I started, maybe too casually, excited about the sports day?
Thinking about signing up for anything?
He dropped his fork with a clatter that sounded deafening in the quiet. His shoulders hunched. No, he mumbled, the word barely audible.
He wouldn't look at me.
My wife's eyes met mine, confusion mingling with alarm.
This wasn't our Ethan.
Why not, sweetie? She asked, her voice soft, gentle.
You always love sports day. A long pause. The air felt thick.
Then, in a rush, the words tumbled out, small and broken.
Kids, they tease me.
His voice trembled.
They call me Little Korean. They say I'm too small. That I'll lose. In everything. And then, the tears. Big, fat drops splashing onto his plate.
He tried to hide his face, but it was too late. The dam had broken. They pick teams for P, and nobody wants me, he choked out, each word a fresh stab to my heart. Even when the teacher makes them, they're mad.
Like I'm a mistake. He told us about Jake. Always Jake. The ringleader.
Jake, whose dad was Coach Miller, that massive guy with the booming voice and the physique of a retired pro athlete. Jake would brag about his dad's size, his strength, using it as another club to beat Ethan down.
Your dad's small, like you, Jake would sneer.
You're weak.
Koreans can't do sports.
The sheer, ignorant cruelty of it all, it left me speechless. It wasn't just kids being kids, it was something uglier, a reflection of something they were hearing or seeing elsewhere.
Prejudice, distilled into playground taunts.
My wife reached across the table, covering Ethan's small hand with hers. I sat frozen, a cold wave of guilt washing over me.
We came here for a better life, for opportunity. Had we inadvertently brought him into a place where he felt smaller, more othered than ever before? Was this the price of chasing a dream?
That feeling of parental helplessness, of failing to shield your child from pain, it's a unique kind of agony. We talked late that night, my wife and I, long after Ethan had cried himself to sleep.
We tossed around ideas. Talking to the school again? Counselor? It all felt insufficient. Like putting a band-aid on a gaping wound.
The damage wasn't just surface level, it had burrowed deep into Ethan's young psyche, planting seeds of doubt and shame about who he was, about his very identity.
How could a conversation undo that? How could a school assembly erase the sting of being called names, of being unwanted on a team? No. What Ethan needed wasn't a talk.
He needed to see it contradicted. He needed proof, undeniable proof, that size wasn't everything, that little Korean didn't mean can't. He needed to see someone who looked like him, someone he looked up to, stand tall, not physically, but in spirit, against that kind of ignorance. He needed his father to show him. And in that moment, looking at my son's tear-streaked face in my mind, I knew what I had to do, no matter how terrifying it seemed. And in that moment, looking at my son's tear-streaked face in my mind, I knew what I had to do, no matter how terrifying it seemed. The decision crystallized, hard and sharp, in the quiet of our living room that night. It wasn't about proving anything to the world, not really.
It was about proving something to Ethan.
That he wasn't inherently less than because of his size or heritage. That his father, the quiet immigrant dad, wasn't someone to be embarrassed by, but someone who would fight for him.
Telling my wife was the next hurdle.
She stared at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and immediate, visceral worry.
You? Run, she whispered, as if the idea was utterly preposterous. And, honestly?
Looking at her, seeing the unspoken image in her mind, me, next to men built like sequoias, I knew why. Most of the dads at Oakwood High looked like they'd stepped off a sports supplement ad.
Broad shoulders, towering height, muscles straining against polos. I'm not built like that. Never have been.
Yes, me, I said, trying to project a confidence I wasn't entirely feeling.
The dad race. The 100 meters.
I saw the worry deepen. But, honey, she started, her voice laced with apprehension.
They're all so big. You haven't really run like that in 15 years. True. 15 years. It felt like a lifetime ago.
Back in college in Korea, I'd been a sprinter. Not the biggest then either, but fast. Explosive. Size wasn't everything on the track, quickness, form, sheer will, that's what mattered. I tried to remind her of that, paint a picture of the athlete I used to be. Don't worry, I insisted, perhaps a little too quickly.
I used to be good. Really good.
It sounded thin, even to my own ears. But her fear only mirrored my own quiet doubts.
Could I really do this?
My training now consisted mostly of chasing a bus or rushing to catch a falling remote.
My body wasn't the finely tuned machine it once was.
The idea of lining up next to Coach Miller and his ilk, it was intimidating, genuinely. But the thought of Ethan, his face crumpled with hurt, his voice small as he recounted the taunts, that was stronger than any fear of personal humiliation.
My potential embarrassment was temporary. Ethan's damaged confidence? That could last a lifetime. This wasn't about me. It was about him.
That determination, that fierce paternal love, became the anchor in the swirling sea of my anxiety. The next morning, breaking the news to Ethan was harder than telling my wife. His eyes widened, mirroring his mother's surprise.
Dad?
You're running, he asked, a strange mix of awe and dread in his voice.
I nodded, trying for a cheerful smile. Yeah, buddy. Thought it might be fun. We can do it together, maybe?
He recoiled slightly.
No.
Dad, please don't. His lower lip trembled.
I don't want the other dads to laugh at you.
They're all so big.
And there it was.
The raw, exposed nerve. His fear wasn't just for himself anymore. He was afraid I would experience the very same ridicule he did, and that somehow, that would hurt him even more.
My chest tightened. How deep had this gone?
Deep enough that he was willing to sacrifice the slim chance of my participation boosting his spirits, just to protect me from potential mockery. It broke my heart, but it also fueled the fire in my gut.
This had to happen.
I gently explained my reasoning, focusing on the message, not just the race.
Ethan, I said, my voice low and steady. It's not about how big you are on the outside. It's about what's inside. Your heart. Your effort.
He listened, his brow furrowed, but his eyes still held that deep-seated anxiety.
He finally agreed to come, reluctantly, after much gentle persuasion. The drive to the school on the morning of the sports day was tense.
Ethan sat beside me, quiet, staring out the window, the vibrant energy emanating from the school grounds ahead seemingly pushing him further into himself. I tried small talk, pointed out funny-shaped clouds, anything to lighten the mood, but his silence was a heavy blanket in the car. My own anxiety built with every block, a tight knot forming in my stomach.
15 years, was I crazy? Could I really do this?
As we pulled into the teeming parking lot, the sheer scale of the event, the throng of parents and kids, the undeniable physical presence of the other fathers milling around, hit me like a wave. For Ethan, I knew, it must have felt like arriving at the lion's den. Stepping onto the sprawling, sun-drenched field, the festive atmosphere, the fluttering banners, the pop music blaring, the shouts and laughter, seemed to amplify his anxiety rather than alleviate it. He stayed plastered to my side, a small shadow, his hand gripping my shirt like a lifeline. Every glance from the crowd, every passing group of kids, seemed to make him flinch. Then we saw them. Over by the bleachers, a knot of boys. Taller, louder. And right in the middle, Jake. Even from a distance, his posture, the way he was holding court, screamed confidence. And just behind them, the unmistakable figure of Coach Miller.
Towering. Broader than any three men I knew combined.
He looked like he could uproot one of the goalposts with a single hand. Seeing the source of so much of Ethan's recent pain standing right there, made my blood run cold for a second. Ethan tugged harder on my shirt. "Dad, there's Jake," he whispered, his voice thin with dread. I put an arm around his shoulder, pulling him close.
"I see him, son. Just ignore them. Today's about us." Easy to say. Much harder to do when you could practically feel their eyes on you.
As if summoned by my gaze, Coach Miller looked over. A wide smile spread across his face, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. He started walking towards us, Jake and a couple of his cronies trailing behind him, still giggling. "Well, look who it is," Coach Miller boomed, his voice carrying easily over the din. He stopped in front of me, his shadow falling over us like a small eclipse. He stuck out a hand, swallowing mine whole in his grip.
"Mike Miller. Jake's dad. Didn't expect to see you here."
The emphasis on "you" was unmistakable. It wasn't a friendly greeting, it was a challenge, thinly veiled. "Mr. Lee," I replied, forcing a polite smile.
"Ethan's father."
He glanced down at Ethan, who was practically hiding behind my leg.
"Ah, the little guy," he said, his tone dismissive.
He turned back to me, his eyes scanning me from head to toe, lingering on my height.
"Heard you signed up for the dash? Brave man."
He chuckled, a low rumble in his chest.
"Not exactly built for speed, are we?"
Jake and his friends snickered, copying his dad's casual cruelty.
My jaw tightened.
The prejudice wasn't just something the kids had picked up, it was right here, modeled by the adults.
By him. Coach Miller leaned in slightly, lowering his voice, but not enough that his buddies couldn't hear. "Look, no pressure, all right? Just have fun. Don't want you to pull anything. These guys are serious."
He gestured to some other dads warming up, stretching massive legs, swinging powerful arms. "Got former college athletes out here. Steve here was a national champion swimmer back in the day. David played college football." He puffed out his chest slightly. "I was scouted for the pros myself, you know." It was a blatant intimidation tactic, listing off credentials, highlighting my presumed inadequacy. I just nodded, keeping my expression neutral, but inside, a slow burn had started.
Intimidation?
Yes, a little bit. It was hard not to feel dwarfed, literally and figuratively, by their presence, their assumptions.
But mostly, it was anger.
Hot, quiet anger at seeing that same dismissive look in Coach Miller's eyes that had chipped away at Ethan's spirit. As the call came for the dad's 100-meter dash participants to report to the starting line, that anger hardened into resolve.
This wasn't just a race anymore. It was a statement. A necessary confrontation. I squeezed Ethan's shoulder. "Okay, buddy. Time to head to the line." Ethan's grip tightened agonizingly on my shirt.
He looked up at me, his eyes swimming with tears again. "Dad, please," he begged, his voice cracking.
"Don't run. Please." My heart ached.
He wasn't afraid for himself anymore, he was terrified for me. Terrified that I would face the same humiliation he did, the same cruel laughter. The crowd around us seemed to fade, their chatter replaced by the echo of Ethan's plea. "Everyone will laugh," he whispered, the words a mirror of the taunts he'd endured. I knelt down, meeting his gaze directly. His face was a landscape of fear and shame.
"Ethan. Look at me."
I held his small, trembling shoulders.
"Are you okay?" He nodded hesitantly.
"Trust your dad," I said, my voice firm but gentle.
"Remember what I told you? It's not about how we look. Not about size. It's about what's inside."
I tapped his chest, right over his heart.
"Right here.
And here," I touched his temple, "in your mind.
That's what counts."
He nodded again, slower this time, a tiny flicker of something unreadable in his eyes.
He didn't look entirely convinced, the anxiety still warring with a nascent hope.
As the final call sounded, he squeezed my hand once more, then slowly, reluctantly, headed back towards the stands, his mom wrapping an arm around him as he sat down. I took a deep breath and turned towards the starting line. The mocking smiles were still there, the towering figures lining up beside me.
But they weren't what I saw anymore. My focus narrowed, the noise of the crowd receding.
There was only the track, the finish line 99 meters away, and the quiet promise I'd made to a brave, hurting boy.
My focus narrowed, the noise of the crowd receding.
There was only the track, the finish line 99 meters away, and the quiet promise I'd made to a brave, hurting boy. I knelt at the starting block, fingers curled around the track, the rough texture grounding me. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Coach Miller beside me, adjusting his massive frame, a smirk still playing on his lips. He caught my eye, gave a little shake of his head, like, "Good luck, little guy, you're going to need it." Around me, the other dads were a wall of muscle and height, their confidence practically vibrating in the air. I heard another murmur drift my way, something about bringing a chair for me at the finish line. The mockery was thick, a heavy blanket suffocating the festive mood.
But it didn't matter. Not anymore.
They saw a small Asian man, out of place, out of time. They didn't see the 15 years etched into my muscle memory. They didn't see the fire ignited by a son's tears.
Runners, to your marks.
The official's voice cut through the chatter. My body instinctively coiled, years of training taking over.
My hands pressed into the track, my feet settled into the blocks. It felt right. Familiar. 15 years melted away.
The stadium, the crowd, the condescending stares, it all faded into a dull roar. There was only the white line ahead, and the burning need to reach it.
Set.
My hips rose, muscles tensing, balanced on the knife edge of anticipation. Every fiber of my being was focused, pulled taut like a bowstring. The air vibrated with held breaths.
My eyes locked onto the finish line.
Ethan's face flashed in my mind, anxious, hopeful, scared. This was for him.
The gun exploded. And I was gone.
It wasn't conscious thought, it was pure, unadulterated reaction.
An explosive burst of power that felt both alien and deeply familiar.
My legs, short but surprisingly strong, churned the track into a blur beneath me. My arms pumped rhythmically, driving me forward.
In the first 10 steps, I felt the immediate shockwave behind me.
The heavy thuds of the larger runners seemed to hesitate, falter. I could practically feel their surprise.
Within 20 meters, I was already pulling ahead.
Not by much, maybe half a stride, but I was leading. The ground blurred faster. The air rushed past my ears. I heard the crowd's roar shift, from expectant chatter to a sudden, collective gasp.
Disbelief.
Then, a wave of confused murmurs washed over the field.
How? How was the little guy in front? I stole a quick glance to my right. Coach Miller's face, just meters behind me, was a picture of utter astonishment, mouth slightly agape.
He was pounding the track, trying to keep pace, but his powerful strides, built for longer distances or explosive bursts in football, couldn't match the quick, efficient turnover of a sprinter.
He was losing ground. Fast. 50 meters. Halfway there. I risked a quick look back. The gap was widening dramatically.
The wall of muscle that had lined up beside me was now a struggling pack, visibly straining, their faces etched with surprise and something that looked suspiciously like panic.
The crowd's reaction escalated. Gasps turned to shouts. Murmurs morphed into excited cheers.
I heard a high-pitched voice from the stands, cutting through the noise.
"What the? Dad?" That sounded like Jake. "Good. Let him see."
My legs burned, my lungs ached, but adrenaline surged through me. I wasn't just running, I was flying. The feeling of the track, the wind in my face, the rhythmic pounding of my own feet, it was like coming home after a long, long journey. Every doubt, every fear, every condescending remark fueled me. The finish line ribbon was in sight now, a white promise against the blue sky.
My body remembered this. The final push. Lean into it. Drive. Drive. Drive.
I emptied everything I had into those last 20 meters. My form held true, honed by countless hours on a different track, in a different life. I could hear the footsteps behind me fading, the desperate struggle of the others swallowed by the rising wave of noise from the stands. The cheers were deafening now, a wave of pure, unexpected enthusiasm.
I wasn't just the little Asian guy anymore. I was the one doing the impossible.
The ribbon hit my chest with a crisp snap.
And just like that, it was over.
I stumbled slightly, catching my breath, lungs burning, legs like lead.
I looked back. It wasn't even close.
The nearest runner was still 5, maybe 10 meters behind me, pumping frantically towards the line. The others were even further back, straggling in, their powerful physiques rendered irrelevant by speed and technique. The silence from the starting line was deafening, replaced by the exploding roar from the stands.
Pure shock. Pure, unadulterated surprise. Then, a wave of cheers erupted, a torrent of sound that washed over me. I did it. I actually did it.
My eyes immediately scanned the crowd, searching for one face amongst the cheering, stunned masses.
Ethan.
My eyes immediately scanned the crowd, searching for one face amongst the cheering, stunned masses.
Ethan.
And there he was, bolting from the stands, weaving through bewildered parents, his small legs churning, face radiant. No fear, no shame, just pure, unadulterated joy and disbelief. He launched himself into my arms, a force of pure, unburdened happiness. I stumbled back slightly, holding him tight, burying my face in his hair. His heart hammered against my chest.
Dad! You did it!
You were so fast, he cried, his voice muffled but clear. Faster than Coach Miller. That simple comparison, spoken with awe, was the true gold medal. It wasn't just a race, it was a validation.
For him. For us.
Relief washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. Every anxious moment, every doubt, every cruel word, worth it. The other dads started crossing the line then, one by one, panting, sweat-soaked.
Coach Miller was among the first, leaning over, hands on his knees, gasping for air.
His eyes, when he finally straightened up, found mine. The condescension was gone, replaced by a look of utter shock, then grudging respect. He walked over slowly, still catching his breath. "All right, I gotta ask," he wheezed, extending a hand again, this time not swallowing mine, but gripping it firmly, equally.
"You a pro? Like, were you a pro?" I just smiled, the exhaustion setting in.
"College, I managed, my own lungs burning.
Track and field back in Korea. 15 years ago." His eyebrows shot up. "College? Seriously?"
He shook his head, a slow, amazed motion.
"Wow. Just, wow. I guess I had you pegged all wrong." That was incredible. Blinding speed. He wasn't joking. The mockery was gone. He saw me now. The athlete.
The man who'd just left him in the dust. A wave of applause rippled through the dads gathered at the finish line, then spread back into the stands. The energy had completely shifted.
The surprise was still there, but it was morphing into admiration, into genuine excitement.
People were pointing, but not with scorn, with amazement. My small stature wasn't a joke anymore, it was part of the improbable triumph. Then, the host, a man with an overly enthusiastic voice, jogged up, microphone in hand.
"Mister," he prompted, looking at me expectantly.
"Lee," I said, holding Ethan tight.
"Kim Taewoo."
I hadn't used my full Korean name here often.
It felt important to say it now. "Mr. Kim Taewoo," the host boomed. "What an astonishing run. Absolutely phenomenal."
Everyone is just speechless. "What's your secret? How did you do that?"
He held the mic out to me.
I took a deep breath, glancing at Ethan, whose eyes were shining up at me, bursting with pride. My chest swelled with emotion, a different kind of burning than from the sprint. "No real secret," I said, my voice a little shaky at first, then growing stronger. "Just remember that you can't always judge what someone is capable of by how they look.
Or where they come from."
I looked out at the crowd, at the kids, at the other parents.
What matters is inside. The effort. The spirit.
A beat of silence, then a wave of applause erupted, louder this time, rolling through the entire field. People were nodding, parents were nudging their kids, pointing at me.
It felt like the message landed.
The event continued, a blur of other races and activities, but everywhere I went, people stopped me.
Introduced themselves. Offered congratulations.
My wife stood beside me, beaming, holding Ethan's hand. For the first time since we arrived in the US, we weren't on the periphery.
We were seen. And positively.
Ethan stayed close, his usual anxious demeanor replaced by a joyful bounce in his step. "Dad, everyone says you're so cool," he whispered, grinning up at me.
Even Jake's friends.
Hearing that, right then, felt like the true victory lap.
Later, the awards ceremony.
All the events culminating in medals.
The dad's race was last. The principal took the microphone, a big smile on his face. He paused for dramatic effect, looked right at me.
"And the winner of the most anticipated, and dare I say, most surprising race of the day, is Mr. Kim Taewoo." Another roar of cheers erupted.
Holding Ethan's hand, I walked up to the makeshift podium. Ethan was practically glowing. The principal placed the gold medal around my neck. It was heavy, solid.
More than just medal, it felt like belonging. "An absolutely remarkable performance, Mr. Kim," the principal said, his voice warm with genuine admiration.
"Truly one for the Oakwood High history books." I took the microphone again, my heart full.
I hadn't planned another speech, especially not a long one in English. But looking out at the faces, at Ethan beside me, at all the kids,
I felt I had to say something more.
"Thank you," I began, speaking slowly, choosing my words carefully. I didn't just run to win today.
I took a breath.
I wanted to show my son, and maybe all the children here, that the world should be a place where you are judged by who you are inside.
By your effort. Your heart.
Not by what you look like, or where you come from. The playground was quiet again, everyone listening.
We all looked different. We have different backgrounds. That's not a weakness. That's our strength.
I saw parents nodding, some with tears in their eyes. The important thing is perseverance.
The spirit to keep trying. To never give up.
Another wave of applause.
Today, I just ran. But I hope this can be a start.
A start for our children to see the beauty in diversity. To respect each other. For who they truly are.
The applause that followed was thunderous, long-lasting.
Standing there, gold medal heavy around my neck, my son's hand in mine, watching the faces in the crowd, the surprise, the respect, the dawning understanding, I knew that day wasn't truly over.
Not yet.
The medals were handed out, the speeches concluded, and the cheers eventually faded, but as I looked out at the faces in the crowd, faces that just an hour ago held mockery or indifference, now held surprise, respect, even a touch of awe, I knew that day wasn't truly over.
Not yet.
The real moments, the ones that would ripple out and change things fundamentally, were just beginning. As my wife and I stood with Ethan, still basking in the glow of the win and the unexpected attention, a figure detached himself from the group of kids near the bleachers. It was Jake. He walked slowly, hesitantly, towards us, his usual swagger completely gone. His friends watched from a distance. He stopped a few feet away, shuffling his feet, not looking directly at Ethan. "Ethan," he mumbled, his voice quiet, almost nervous. Ethan looked surprised, clutching his dad's hand tighter. "Look, man," Jake continued, finally meeting Ethan's eyes for a second, then looking away.
"About, calling you names. And stuff." He kicked at the ground.
"And about you being small, and running," he trailed off, visibly uncomfortable.
My heart swelled. This wasn't prompted.
This was Jake, the bully, facing the kid he'd hurt. "I'm sorry, Ethan," Jake finally got out, the words a little rushed but clear. "My dad," he said, "well, he said a lot after the race. And, you're not small." Or, whatever I said.
He looked at the ground again.
Ethan stared at him for a moment, then a slow smile spread across his face, the brightest I'd seen in months.
He didn't hesitate.
"It's okay, Jake," he said, his voice soft.
Really? Forget about it.
Jake's head snapped up, surprise warring with relief.
Really? Yeah, Ethan nodded.
He glanced at me, then back at Jake, a new confidence blooming in his posture.
Hey, maybe we can play soccer sometime? After school?
Jake's face broke into a genuine smile.
Yeah. Seriously? Me? And Sam?
He pointed to one of his friends watching.
Sam plays.
Sure, Ethan shrugged, looking impossibly lighter, freer.
Anyone who wants to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jake grinned.
Cool. See ya, Ethan.
He gave a little wave and jogged back to his friends, who immediately surrounded him, talking animatedly. My eyes met my wife's, and we exchanged a look that held a universe of emotion, relief, pride, overwhelming gratitude.
Just like that. One conversation. Initiated by the bully.
The shift was palpable.
Then, Coach Miller approached, alone this time. He didn't boom or swagger.
He walked right up to me, extended his hand again. "Mr. Kim," he said, his voice low, sincere.
That was truly something. Honestly, I owe you an apology.
He squeezed my hand, a respectful grip.
I was way out of line before the race. Judging you.
Your kid. He looked towards Ethan, then back at me. I had some serious prejudices.
And you blew them away. Taught me a real lesson today.
I shook his hand, holding his gaze.
It's okay, Coach Miller, I said, meaning it. It's a learning process. For all of us. He nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face.
Jake told me he apologized to Ethan. And he wants to play soccer with him.
Said Ethan's really good at math, too.
A small laugh escaped him.
Kid only ever talked about sports before.
You opened his eyes too, I think.
Hearing that, my chest tightened with emotion again. My son. Seen. Valued.
Not just for fitting in physically, but for all of him. Other parents came up then, one after another.
Some I recognized, some I didn't.
Handshakes, pats on the back, genuine compliments about the race, about the speech. The air had cleared.
The barrier was down.
The little Asian guy was now Mr. Kim Taewoo, the dad who ran like lightning and spoke about inner strength. We were, for the first time, part of the fabric of this school community, not just observers. The drive home was a complete contrast to the morning.
Ethan bounced in his seat, chattering nonstop.
Reliving the race, mimicking my start, recounting everyone who told him his dad was cool. Even Jake said you were awesome, he repeated, wide-eyed. His eyes sparkled with a joy I hadn't seen in far too long.
He was light again. Free. 2 months later, that lightness hadn't faded. Ethan's school life had transformed. He wasn't hiding anymore.
He walked into school with his head held high, backpack swinging. He was making friends, real friends. Jake, Sam, David, a whole little group. They played soccer at recess, they hung out after school sometimes. The teasing stopped.
Completely.
His size wasn't a target, it was just his size. And his strengths, the ones that had been overshadowed by the bullying, started to shine. He joined the math club. A few weeks ago, he came home beaming, clutching a small trophy.
He'd won first place in the district math competition. Dad! Look, he'd shouted, his face radiant with confident pride. Holding him then, hugging him tight, I felt the culmination of that day on the track.
It wasn't just about winning a race or changing a few minds. It was about giving my son the chance to find himself again. To believe in his own worth. One lazy Saturday, we were at the park, Ethan playing soccer with Jake and Sam.
Coach Miller happened to be walking by.
He stopped, waved.
Hey, Mr. Kim. Ethan.
He smiled, a warm, easy smile this time.
Looks like they're having fun.
Those boys are thick as thieves these days. He watched them for a moment.
Jake talks about Ethan all the time.
Especially after that math competition. He said he couldn't believe how fast Ethan solved those problems. My wife came up, and we stood there, watching our son, laughing, running, completely at ease, playing with the very kids who had made his life miserable just months before.
It felt surreal. Peaceful. We came here for a better life. It had been hard.
There were moments, so many moments, of doubt, of fear, of feeling lost and alone. Moments where the weight of being an immigrant felt crushing, and seeing our son suffer added a layer of pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. But looking at him now, truly happy, confidently finding his place, I knew we were finally putting down roots. Real roots. Not just in the soil of this town, but in the heart of its community. That 100-meter dash, that tiny fraction of a moment on a track, it wasn't just a race. It was a turning point. A testament to the fact that you are never small when your inner strength shines brightest. And watching Ethan, running free and laughing under the afternoon sun, that light was sparkling everywhere. And watching Ethan, running free and laughing under the afternoon sun, that light was sparkling everywhere. It struck me then, standing there at the edge of the soccer field, the weight of my gold medal long since put away, the cheers of the sports day a happy echo in my mind, that single, brief sprint wasn't just about winning a race. It was about proving a point that went far beyond the finish line. The real lesson, the one I hoped resonated not just with Jake and Coach Miller and the parents at the school, but with my son and with myself, is simple, yet profoundly powerful. The true measure of a person's worth is never, ever, found in their outward appearance. Not their height, not their build, not the color of their skin, and certainly not the place they were born. Those are just external details. The real stuff, the stuff that counts, lives inside. It's in your heart, in your mind, in the effort you're willing to put in, the courage you find when things get tough, the perseverance to keep going even when the world tries to tell you you're not enough. That's inner strength. That's what truly defines you. That day at the sports meet became a catalyst. It was a single action, born of desperation and love, that somehow managed to crack open rigid perspectives and let a little understanding shine through. It challenged the easy, lazy assumptions that fuel prejudice and discrimination. It showed, in the most undeniable way possible, not through argument or pleading, but through simple, visible capability, that judging people based on stereotypes is not just unkind, it's often just plain wrong. For Ethan, the impact was immeasurable. It wasn't just the end of the bullying, though that was a huge relief. It was the unlocking of something inside him. The race gave him permission to shed the shame, to stand tall in his own skin. Seeing his dad, the small Korean dad, not just participate but dominate against the very people whose size had been weaponized against him, it changed everything. It gave him back his light. His confidence blossomed, spreading into every corner of his life, from making friends with his former bully to excelling in math. And for our family? It felt like we finally exhaled. The constant, low-level anxiety of being outsiders, of navigating a world that didn't always seem to see us, it didn't vanish completely, perhaps it never does for immigrants, but it lessened. We weren't just living in Oakwood Creek anymore, we were becoming part of it. Accepted, respected, for who we were, not dismissed for who we weren't. That journey, our immigrant journey, had its bumps, its heartaches. But looking back, standing there in the park, watching Ethan's joyful energy as he played with his friends, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had faced a difficult challenge, one that threatened to dim our son's spirit, and we had, together, found a way through. So, yes, we are never small. Not when we carry the strength of our character, the fire of our determination, and the unwavering belief in our own inherent worth. When we allow that inner light to shine, authentically and bravely, we can overcome the shadows of prejudice and find our place, truly and confidently, in the world. And that, I think, is the most important victory of all.